What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to the Canadian Football Fanatics YouTube channel. Thank you guys for tuning in to another video. We have ourselves a champion, and we have ourselves a back-to-back champion. Congratulations, shout out to the Okanagan Sun for capturing the Cullen Cup for the second straight year in a row. They add to their, uh, you know, don't quite want to say maybe dynasty quite yet, but this last little bit of run, obviously, Canadian Bowl champions in 2022. We'll see what they're able to do this year. If they're able to win, maybe 2, 3 in the 4 or 5 year run, it's going to kind of put themselves into CGFL history. But let's let them take care of business first on the field. Looking forward to a semifinal matchup with the St. Clair Saints, which was obviously, as we are well aware, last year's Canadian Bowl rematch. These two teams matching up for the fight for the right, excuse me, to call themselves national champions. And obviously, the Saints came out on top a year ago, and the Okanagan Sun, I'm sure, will be looking for redemption this time around. This time obviously won't be redemption to call themselves national champions. It'll be to punch themselves a ticket to the Canadian Bowl, another opportunity to play another week, which I'm sure it's kind of that's where their focus is this week. Without even having to ask Coach Miller or anybody on that program, they're going to be focused on the task at hand before even looking ahead to any sort of Canadian Bowl matchup and making sure all their focus is towards the Saints here on Saturday. So looking forward to it. Back at it, as I mentioned, guys. We're going to be along the way as long as a team. Now we know what team it is. The Okanagan Sun continues to move on throughout the CGFL playoffs. We're going to be here every step away to break things down, preview. We're not going to call this a preview, I don't think, because we're not going to preview the semifinal. Unfortunately, we're unable to make things work with Coach LaChance. Wanted to possibly see if we could sit down with him and get him in to interview and kind of get his side of things from the Saints side of things, excuse me. But just unfortunately, with them traveling and whatnot out from Ontario, things couldn't work out. So we're going to have Coach Miller on, of course, once again. If you guys have enjoyed all of our BCFC content along the way, of course, guys, please be sure to leave a like on the video, comment down below. Most importantly, subscribe to the channel when you guys subscribe. Hit the notification bell. You guys get notified every single time we go live or upload a video like this one right here. Excuse me. It was quite the Cullen Cup weekend. I guess let's kind of break things down here first. As I mentioned, let's bring it back to the Cullen Cup, which was last week. The Okanagan Sun capturing that. Before we get to the Okanagan Sun and put to bed the conference play in the BC Football Conference, big shout out to the other 6 teams, of course, and most importantly, the West Shore Rebels, runner-up in this year's Cullen Cup championship, as they put together a very special season as well. 7 wins in the regular season, 8 altogether this season. They fall 1 game short of calling themselves provincial or conference champions. Had quite the run. So big shout out to West Shore as they had themselves a fantastic year. But the Okanagan Sun were the Okanagan Sun for a reason. Back-to-back Cullen Cup champions. Let's get to business as we move forward. Okanagan, for the most part, dominated that one from start to finish. From talking about the Cullen Cup last week, got out to 14-0 lead. West Shore kind of clawed back 14-7, 21-7, I believe, 21-14, I believe. And then after that, Okanagan really didn't look back from that point on. I believe it finished 44-26, I want to say, or something like that. Forgive me as I don't remember off the top of my head. 45-26, excuse me, off by 1. Um, but Okanagan just, for my money, and I'm going to be interested to get in with Coach Miller. One of the more complete teams I think I've seen in the BCFC in my time watching. My time dates back to, about 2008, 2009, kind of some of my earlier days. Wish I could remember kind of the 2000, earlier days, 2006 and 7 maybe, but 2009, 10 was kind of some of my earlier memories of going to Caledonia Park. I was lucky enough to kind of watch a lot of those, Andrew Harris, Jordan Yance days, watch a lot of the conference play, got to know a lot of the good players around the conference. Even some of those early days of the Langley Rams, right? The Malcolm Williams, the Nick Downeys. You get to the Okanagan Sun in later years. and in the mid 2010s, in the 2013s to 2015s, as they started to dominate 2014, 2015. West Shore came onto the scene with Jamal Lyles, Trey Campbell, and Ashton McKinnon, and other guys along the offensive defensive lines. 2017, Raiders winning it. The Rams kind of coming into their run with numerous amount of talented players with the Rams, and then obviously Okanagan here the last few years. You know, we arguably saw them, and not arguably, we saw them lose their two best players in the offseason, and one of them not really knowing, to be honest. Obviously, they lose Elio and Noah knowingly due to his eligibility aging out in his fifth year season. He obviously in his one and only season in the BCFC CJFL, he ends up breaking numerous records, ends up having a phenomenal season, moves on, and was they're the straw that stirred the drink offensively. And I think why they look maybe not different this year, or you could even say different this year. Obviously, they have a guy like Jaron Hardesty who's very talented, 1,000 yard back in himself, but they have this receiving core with 4 or 5 weapons now. Who we see, Chewy Thomas, we're seeing Halliburton, we're seeing Falconer, we're seeing guys like Melanson six as well. Famakinde, I can't forget him in the receiving core where they're 5, 6 guys deep now. Kruger's looked fantastic here down the stretch, and all season. To be honest, if we're talking about a larger sample size, defensively, obviously they lose a guy like Jacob Bond, and that's a huge missing piece. But they haven't really missed a beat defensively, right? They've been super dominant. Obviously, you look at two imports like a Jarvion Williams, Jaquinta Summers. They come in, get 12 sacks, 11 sacks in the regular season each, and are able to just flip the script defensively. You look in the secondary, guys like Tariq and Borhat, obviously leading guys that are younger, like O'Reilly Easton, Easton Fensky, Vicente Pereira, Ty Walker kind of stepping up, a guy like Glenn Kaduya when he was healthy. They have guys everywhere, and as I mentioned, Jacob Bond in the linebacking core, they were able to have a guy like Phil Palmerin step up, who's previous team MVP, into a role that he's very familiar with and very comfortable in. And then you look at a guy like Grayson, obviously, who's been a phenomenal player as well the last few years. And special teams wise, as I said, I think this is the most complete team I've seen in a long team from top to bottom. So I'm very curious to see what happens on Saturday. As I know from basically hearsay, or you could say the social media whiz. Shout out to Wiz, as I'm sure he is listening. With some of the highlights, I'm very familiar with the Saints, but haven't sat down for a full game, even any parts of a game at all. The last you could even say 2 seasons. So not too familiar with them. I know they are very talented, as I mentioned, and as I said, seen the clips and whatnot. They have, I'm sure, a very complete team as well. It's not going to be no easy task on Saturday for the Okanagan Sun, but that's kind of why we, as I mentioned, doing our other content shows and whatnot. We have our weekly show throughout the week on our 13th Man Sports platform with Shane, Blake, Coach Phil, and myself, where we talk some CGFL as well. Shane's obviously out in Ontario, or I guess I shouldn't say obviously to you guys, as you probably don't know, but out in Ottawa, actually played for the Ottawa Sooners actually as well. Blake has a little bit of ties. I wouldn't even say ties. He's just a fan of the Langley Rams. From time to time, we'll get out to games. So we'll talk some BCFC, we'll talk some CGFL on the weekly show, and we kind of made, maybe I made my picks more so to say that I think it's going to be an Okanagan Sun versus Regina Thunder Canadian Bowl this year, which I'm looking forward to. But obviously, that's as well my bias to the BCFC collaborating with the conference this year with our platform, of course. Um, and bias, as I said, wanting to see the Bowl get brought back out west. I do believe that there's been this talk of rightfully so, the Prairies has been very dominant, especially with the Saskatoon Hilltops. The Regina Thunder of late have put out a lot of very talented players themselves. Not to undermine anybody at all. It's kind of, I feel like, to relate it to like the Jordan LeBron debate that everyone likes to have. And if you take one side, you have to ultimately hate the other guy. Where I always like to kind of clarify before, I always like to have these debates with guys that I'm obviously Team MJ. I shouldn't say obviously as well. But I love me some LeBron James. He's in my top three all-time basketball players with Kobe Bryant and LeBron James himself because I grew up with the kind of end of Kobe's the 2009 2010 championships as a kid, and then LeBron James got to see his prime, him growing up. So big fans of them, but MJ has always been the goat. He was kind of who I was my early days of basketball. I was watching some of those highlight clips and whatnot. So me saying the Okanagan Sun are great isn't undermining any other team. The Regina Thunder, the St. Clair Saints, even the Saskatoon Hilltops that they're able to move on. So I think it also ties into something, not to get too off topic, but the quarterback conversation that's been going on, quite the debate, and I love to see it. That's what pages like me and Will are for, to kind of spark that debate and whatnot. But just a PSA and a reminder, guys, that both quarterbacks can be great. I'm not even going to go farther past that. I believe people should know who I'm talking about in that debate. And both have had a phenomenal season. But we're going to get back on track, back to, as I mentioned, just the complete team that I think the Okanagan Sun are. So looking forward to the matchup here on Saturday, as these two teams also have a ton of history. As we know, played in last year's Canadian Bowl with the St. Clair Saints getting the better of the Okanagan Sun by a score 37-22. These two teams have also played in this very game before the CGFL semifinal. The Okanagan Sun coming out top on their way to their national championship in 2022 by a score of 42-24. Both of those games actually were back in Ontario, so this will be the first time these two teams match up out west, out in the Apple Bowl up in Kelowna. And then, of course, these two teams also have a little bit of history with Windsor, AKO Fratman, St. Clair Saints, previous team, or kind of but before they rebranded to the Saints in 2021, I believe. When they were Windsor, AKO Fratman, these two teams matched up when Windsor beat them in the 1999 Canadian Bowl as well. So these two teams are very familiar with one another and have kind of that interconference rival, if you will. But I'm looking forward to this one on Saturday. It should be a great CGFL matchup. We just kind of wanted to get on here, give you guys my kind of initial thoughts for about 10-15 minutes before we're joined by Coach Miller for another 10-15 minutes, and then we're going to get out of here. So, as I mentioned, if you guys have been enjoying all of our content here on not only our YouTube channel, please be sure to like, comment, subscribe. When you guys subscribe, press the notification bell. You guys get notified every time we go live or upload a video just like this one right here. As well, follow us on our social media platforms. You guys can find us on Twitter or X at _CFNX. We are over there as well. Haven't been as active during the season as we usually were, kind of during the CFL season, but it's been tough when kind of been occupied with. It's unfortunate, guys. I would love to this to be my full time job, but we also have a 9 to 5 to take care of as well, and try to balance a little bit of time with the family, the girlfriend, some other outside of football activities, the friends, all that good stuff. So only have so many hours in the day. As I mentioned, I wish this would be a full time job, but it hopefully one day we'll try to speak that into existence. As I mentioned, you guys can follow us on Instagram as well at Canadian Football Fanatics. We're doing quite well with our following over there, as we are nearing 4,000 followers, consistently over 1 million views now for 30 days, the last 3 months, which has been cool. So we appreciate you guys first and foremost. Couldn't do it without you guys, and the following that we do have on all of our platforms have been a ton of fun. I cannot wait because obviously, this is a great time of year, but I feel like going into next year, going into the offseason, we're going to be able to take it to another level, hopefully, with some of our offseason discussions with Tyler McLaren, obviously president of the BCFC. Hopefully, we're going to be able to get on the same page and be able to work out some pretty cool content ideas and other stuff like that going into 2026. So looking forward to that. But as I mentioned last week, and I guess before and previously, as long as somebody out of the BCFC wins, we're going to continue our content here moving forward on the channel. So without further ado, let's send it up to Kelowna and our sit down with Okanagan Sun head coach Travis Miller. Alrighty, folks, joining me for the third straight week and fresh off the practice field, Okanagan Sun head coach Travis Miller. Coach, how we doing?
Good. How are you doing?
Oh, doing fantastic, doing fantastic. A little midweek edition, coach. We're not going to kind of preview the game, but we want to talk with you guys, obviously with our ties to the conference and whatnot, collaborating with them this year, and kind of wanted to just your thoughts, obviously coming off the Cullen Cup and then preparing for the semifinal matchup against the St. Clair Saints on Saturday, Coach. Alrighty, Coach. As I was just saying, I'm curious, not wanting to ask you guys, how you're feeling coming off the Cullen Cup champion, because I know it's just step number two of, four, kind of wanting to become national champions more so than just a conference champion. So I'm wanting to kind of curious of kind of ask you, how you guys are feeling about kind of, being the model program in the BCFC, winning the last two Cullen Cups, and everybody kind of looking up towards you guys and really chasing towards wanting to be, the Okanagan Sun.
Yeah, I think when you look at our conference as a whole, the parity that we have over the last 4 or 5 years has been paramount. So 21 Langley was a very strong team. 22 was us. 23 was West Shore. 24, I think it could have been Langley or us. And then this year, obviously, we had the opportunity to come out on top. I think from a global standpoint or from a Canadian standpoint, it really bodes well that our conference has the parity that we have, because without the games that we've had this past season, especially against teams like West Shore, we wouldn't be able to be in the position that we're in right now, heading into this game. And I think one of the biggest things for us, and I've seen this in, the past years when we've had the opportunity to go to national games, that, the hardest games that we play in some cases are in our conference. And those games, really build the character of the team. And those things start to really play dividends when you get into these big games later on in the season.
Yeah, I know. I believe when we talked earlier this season, you meant kind of you mentioned last year you guys using the regular season almost kind of like you were battle tested in a way and seeing some of those tougher challenges, and obviously as I mentioned being very biased towards the BCFC, I believe it's the best from top to bottom conference that you're seeing on a weekly basis, on a yearly basis. Other great teams and other great conferences as well, but Coach, to kind of move on from that, obviously with winning a conference championship, you guys move on and get to punch your ticket. I'm curious, knowing how competitive your group is, how excited they are to kind of move on and have another opportunity, another week to play.
Yeah, I think we kind of talked about this at the beginning of the season and throughout kind of the course of the season. For us, it's about accomplishing goals week in and week out, and making sure that we knock off the things that we said at the beginning of the year. So when we started off, it was setting the conference, or sorry, being number one in the conference and setting us up for the playoffs through the Apple Bowl, which we accomplished. It was going 1-0 each week the next 4 weeks, but realistically, it was setting up this rematch with St. Clair. And I think from our standpoint, I don't think we ever carry over year, but it's definitely one of those things where the only team to beat us in the last 24 months is coming to our house. And so there's a little bit of extra motivation for our group, not necessarily to get revenge, but to have that opportunity to play at the highest level that we can, and execute the best that we can. So I definitely see that with the guys. They're motivated, they're energized. We had a really good day of practice today. It's our fourth practice already this week. We went Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, so we had a couple of workouts in between then and now, so I guess three practices I should say. But it's definitely one of those things where for our guys, they're motivated, they're experienced, and they're excited. I mean, it's an exciting time of year to be playing football. One of only four teams in the country. There's teams that have been sitting at home recruiting the last couple of weeks, and we're fortunate to be out here still executing and playing, and we don't take that for granted.
Yeah, Coach, I love to see their Saturday or Sunday morning, excuse me, when I open up Instagram and Coach Beatty's already in the film room, beginning his preparation for the week. I love to see that. So I'm curious, Coach. You already mentioned it. Let's dive right into it. I'm curious, with your history with the St. Clair Saints. Obviously, you guys played in this very game, the CJFL semifinal back in 22, on your guys' way to the national championship. You guys played last year in the Canadian Bowl. What are kind of just some of those challenges that the Saints present, on offense and defense, even special teams as well?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, they're coached extremely well. Obviously, Mike Lachance and Mike Morency have been there for probably a combined 50 years, I think, between the two of them since 2000 or 99 or something like that. So when you look at the length of time that those guys have been there and the continuity that they bring, it's an impressive run for that program. And I mean, they're obviously a powerhouse in the East. And I think you go back to 22. One of the comments that Mike said when the game ended was that it was a different St. Clair team, and I think that really is true. It's holding true. They've changed the narrative of the Ontario Conference of being the, the kind of the second tier conference, and they've really set the example for the entire country with what they're doing in St. Clair. So from an organizational perspective, I think the coaching sets them apart. Defensively, they have some amazing defensive linemen. Offensively, I don't know how we're going to stop them. I mean, that offense is high powered with their, Matt Gannett at quarterback. That offensive line is massive. Their running game is great with MJ. And then you look at those receivers. That receiving group is a U Sport receiving group. So, for us, it's going to be a challenge no matter what we do, and it's something that I think our team is obviously, willing to take on and excited to have the opportunity. But at the end of the day, it is going to be a hard fought battle.
Yeah, so I'm curious, Coach, with as I mentioned, you guys' familiarity not only with this team, but in this spot, being in a national champion, national semifinal, but in that national bracket, right, where teams start to get into that interconference. You could kind of almost say it's unfamiliar territory for a lot of teams, right? You start to get into your conference where you have a little bit of familiarity with each other. I'm curious, what's maybe been the message to your group throughout the week, and maybe even getting into playoffs here. As I remember talking with you preseason about last year's matchup and kind of leading at halftime and kind of letting that opportunity get away from you guys. When I'm sure at some point adversity is going to strike on Saturday for you guys, and overcoming that adversity and being able to kind of look it in the face and realize that St. Clair's going to make their plays, but we're going to make our plays too, and kind of just being able to make sure that we're ready for, that kind of next play mentality as well. If, we have a bad play, we have a good play, we're just on to the next one, and we're going to try to, make sure that we put together a full 60 minutes.
Yeah, I think we've had adversity in a multitude of games. If you look at, our game against West Shore in West Shore, we were down by 18 to 20 points, and we started to battle back, and then we had a couple touchdowns scored against us, and we still came back. So I don't think that there's one necessarily in particular situation or any game that we've really had where we didn't have any sort of adversity except maybe the Langley game. And it was, one of those things where we came out and we were motivated and we executed extremely well. So I think there's going to be times where our guys have had that opportunity to draw from past experience and had the opportunity to really see, games where things weren't working perfectly for us at times. And they understand, I think now more than ever, how important each snap, each rep, each opportunity to take the field is. And I really do see a different change in those guys. So our message is pretty simple, and that's don't change anything. The process that we've developed has gotten us to where we are, and it's going to take us as far as we're going to go. And it's about really leaning into that process and making sure that every rep in practice is as positive or sorry, as perfect as possible, and making sure that when we do have adversity or we do have issues in practice that we're addressing it so that it doesn't translate into multiple reps or going on to the game on Saturday. So for us, I think at this point it's just a model of consistency and making sure that we're continuing the same effort and everything we've done to get us to this point.
Yeah, Coach. I want to ask you kind of more so, a team question, I guess you could call it. When you look at your club, as I mentioned, Coach, with my kind of familiarity with the conference and stuff like that, grew up in Nanaimo, was able to kind of watch some of those Raider teams around 2008, 2009. Remembering even some of the earlier Langley Ram days, the Malcolm Williams, Nick Downey's, your guys' Okanagan Sun, 2015, 2014, some of those talented teams, as you mentioned, the Rams and stuff like that, before the COVID and whatnot, even after COVID, you guys coming out of it, West Shore's talented group. And maybe it's recency bias, but for my money, your club has been one of the more complete teams that I can remember off kind of just the top of my head, going from top to bottom. Before you joined us, I kind of went through the names and names that could go on from the offensive side of the ball, the defensive side of the ball. As I mentioned, maybe recency bias comes into play, Coach. But from your experiences, this has been maybe one of the more complete teams that you've coached throughout your experience.
You know what? It's funny, Cole. We had this conversation yesterday as coaches and kind of sat back, and it's one of those things where you spend a lot of time recruiting. And this offseason, I had a lot of time sitting in my hospital bed recruiting, and I spent quite a bit of time, identifying players that I thought would provide, a lot of value and obviously fill some holes and gaps for us. And it wasn't until yesterday when we sat back and we kind of looked at the sum of all the parts, all the different players from all across the country, North America, the world that have come to join our program, and it was a pretty humbling experience to look back and think to yourself, we were looking at these guys and we weren't ever sure who was going to come or who wasn't going to be here. And when they finally did commit and we finally got through this season, to sit back and look at this group and realize how talented they are. I don't think in my 4 years that I've been here, I don't think we've had as talented of a team from top to bottom as I've seen now. And I think that the thing that I enjoy the most is seeing the change in this team from the beginning of the year till the end of the year. And it's not easy. I've said this to you. I've said it to a lot of people anybody that'll listen to me, is that, I'm not an easy coach, and Shane Beatty's not an easy coach to play for. Neither of us are particularly easy on our players. And it's something that a very unique skill set. Only very few players and coaches can handle the intensity and the expectation that, I hold for our program. And I do think that the players that we recruited are a special group. It's a special time to be around this team. And I think that the, mentality that we have right now, not just as, this year or last year, any of the years that I've been here, has been, you know, the national championship or bust. And that's not to say that there's other teams that don't feel the same way, but for us, that's everything. And that's from the very beginning of the season through the middle of the season through the end of the season. And it's paid off because of how hard we've coached these players, how much they've bought in. They've leaned into the process that we've developed, and the culture that we have at this point is truly special. It's something that I'm super proud of, and I'm excited to continue.
Yeah, coach, as I was just kind of alluding to there before you joined, I was talking about, I said arguably, it's not arguably. You lost your two best players on offense and defense, obviously, with Noah moving on to graduation, aging out last year, the multiple records he was able to break. You lose Jacob Bond to a professional opportunity in the CFL, and you guys arguably got better. And it's unbelievable to say, because I don't think, you could group CGFL into it, but I don't know if many youth sports program could kind of come out on the other side, and not to say better by any means, because I'm sure a Jacob Bond in this defense would be a treat even more. But it's crazy to see how you guys have kind of, as you said, I'm sure in the offseason there was a lot of hard work recruiting and whatnot, trying to find your Okanagan Sun DNA. But coach, I know it's been busy, so I want to get you out of here. Last few, and I'm sure this one's going to be kind of saved up the last cliche question, I guess you could say. But I'm curious, coach, as I would imagine, you guys are very confident and should be, and I don't want this to come off in a cocky way by any means. I kind of want to get, hopefully, maybe we'll see if it's a cliche answer or not. But I'm just curious why you're confident in your group to kind of come out on the right side of things on Saturday.
Well, first and foremost, I think St. Clair has earned the spot of the number one team in the country. So, I think kudos to them on the season that they've had. They've put together arguably one of the best, if not one of the top two best ever seasons in the history of the CJFL. And I think it's unique with the fact that we had something very similar in terms of our points scored and our yardage and all the different aspects between our offense and our defense. So it's a pretty cool opportunity for both teams to play each other, and realistically, what it's going to come down to, I think, is the team that makes the least amount of mistakes. And I think from our side of things, anyways, when it comes to confidence, I don't think any of our team, any of our guys lack that confidence. And it doesn't matter if it's St. Clair, or if it's the Hilltops, or if it's West Shore, or any of the other top programs in our conference or in the country. Our guys are willing, excited, and ready to play any team that lines up against us. And the process that we've developed, from our standpoint, has got us to where we are, and we're going to lean in and really buy into that. So at the end of the day, we're going to try to, score more points than them. We're going to try to hold them to less points than we score, and we're going to hopefully come out with a W.
Awesome, coach. I appreciate your time all season, coach. Once again, best of luck on Saturday, coach. We are all now in your corner, rooting for you guys to bring back a national championship back out west, because we are the best conference. I do believe that from top to bottom, and you guys are hopefully able to prove it on the field. Coach, let's maybe speak this into existence, and we'll chat with you next week. And best of luck on Saturday.
Sounds good. Thanks for everything you do. It's been a great season. Appreciate your coverage. Appreciate everything you do. It's been nothing short of awesome to have this kind of forum for our not only our teams but our league. So congratulations on a great season to you, and thanks for everything you do, Cole.
Of course, coach. Alrighty, folks. Huge shout out to Coach Miller once again. Has been super gracious, not only the last 3 weeks, bugging him in his DMs, him being gracious enough to give me his number and bug him through his phone. When I need some guys, need some intel for players to watch, that sort of stuff. I need some info. Coach Miller has been really awesome. It's been easy to root for Coach Miller this season. If we're being very honest, Coach Miller is the best coach in the BCFC for a reason, and could get Coach of the Year every year. But I feel like if you look at the NFL, stuff like that, guys like Andy Reid, guys like Coach Tomlin, guys, Coach the Harbaughs, you could say, guys that have that pedigree as the better coaches in the league, have that expectations on them. So it kind of it loses a little bit of the luster, I guess you could say, for them being voted every year. As I said, you could easily vote Coach Miller every year Coach of the Year because he deserves it. He is rightfully the best coach in the conference. But I think when it comes to awards and stuff like that, there is also storylines and stuff like that, right? So you see this year with Coach Borum obviously winning it from the conference, Coach Rabsky winning it from our platform. You could argue that Coach Brian down in West Shore could have been in and he was for my money. I know we had some conversations in the inside the BCFC show throughout the season about some award winners, Coach Brian being in his first year, keeping that standard going and improving the standard by 2 games. Last year, them being 500 at 5-5, improving to 7-3 on the year. They could have been 8-2. They could have been even. If they were able to win that first game versus Okanagan 9-1, you never know what could have happened. So, ton of storylines, as I mentioned. Just very grateful to Coach Miller all season, and I very hope we are chatting a week from now because, as I said, we are all now in the Okanagan Sun corner wearing a little bit of orange. Maybe I should wear a little bit of orange tonight, a little bit of maybe some BC Lions and Okanagan Sun orange. Shout out to all the other BC Lions times BCFC alums as well. Obviously, Javon Katoy, Kieran Passant, Jacob Bond, Sean White, Adam Konar. I believe that's it, right? Let's see. Whitey, Konar, Katoy, Bond, Passant, Pickett. I feel like I'm forgetting one, but don't believe I am off the top of my head. Shout out to all those guys as they will be it kind of will be a nice transition into a 1 o'clock kickoff up in Kelowna from the Apple Bowl to kick off the CJFL semifinal, and then at 4 o'clock Pacific, the BC Lions kick off in Regina to take on the Riders for the right to play a home playoff game the following week, which should be a dandy one as the BC Lions are currently the hottest team in the CFL. Did they get hot at the right time? Let's hope so, folks. Let's maybe speak that one into existence. Let's hope that they do play a home playoff game, as I do hope to be in attendance for that one, covering that one. Hopefully, we'll be able to do some maybe coverage of the BCFC guys that are playing in the playoffs. But other than that, folks, we are here. Hopefully, this is not the last show of the year. If it is, though, as I mentioned, please be sure to support us on all of our platforms at Canadian Football Fanatics on Instagram, at underscore CF Fanatics on Twitter. Of course, please be sure to like the video, comment down below, subscribe to the channel. Most importantly, hit the notification bell. You guys get notified every single time we go live or upload a video like this one. Let the BCFC know, guys, that you guys have enjoyed this content coverage, and you guys want to see more of it because I think that'll go a long way to having some more things change in the conference for the better. I think we need to hopefully get things moving in the right direction in the off season. I would love for that to happen. So I think if we get some, get some comments, get some word out there that people want some off season coverage, all that sort of stuff. I think it'll be awesome that we were able to do it on the channel. Of course, once off season hits, we have this could be the last show from our BCFC coverage this season, and then we have 3 weeks of playoffs and then we're back into podcast season, baby. I cannot wait. We had fabulous guests on, such as Taylor Elgersma, NFL quarterback / Winnipeg Blue Bombers draft pick, Keelan White, Ottawa Redblacks rookie, BC Lions rookie Jackson Finley. Who else do we have on? Tyson Philpott, Logan Furland, Clark Barnes, numerous CFL Canadian players will definitely have that going in the off season. Looking forward to that very much. Let us know who you guys would like to see. We already have in mind a few people, and we'll keep that in the bank. Might have even have a few recorded, actually. So we'll see how that goes. We'll probably release those into December, as I mentioned. After Grey Cup, usually like to take about a week or two off, kind of recharge the batteries, and then get right back into the thick of things. So stay tuned for that. Looking forward to those. It should be a ton of fun. Other than that, folks, enjoy the football on Saturday and Sunday. Also, obviously, if anybody doesn't know, as Coach Miller kind of alluded to, the winner of this matchup between the St. Clair Saints and Okanagan Sun, which takes place 1 p.m. Pacific kickoff up from Kelowna. So for anybody that is tuning in, maybe that is from Toronto, Ontario area, Eastern, it'll be a 4 o'clock kickoff on CJFL TV. To tune in, not only to that, but on Sunday, the PFC final takes place between the Regina Thunder and Saskatoon Hilltops for the right to come out Prairie champions and then punch their ticket to hosting the national championship, as it'll be in the Prairie. So whoever wins that one, whether it's Regina or Saskatoon, that'll be where the excuse me, a little bit of a burp slash heartburn there, is where the national championship will be played. Although this one, I believe, is the Prairie Championship is being played from Mosaic. So neither team's home field is being played in the stadium. So we'll see. Maybe the national championship will take place there as well. So we will be back hopefully a week from now. Let's try to speak that into existence after the Okanagan Sun defeat the St. Clair Saints. So it should be a good one, folks. As I mentioned, tune in to CJFL TV, BCFC TV for this one. There's going to be a lot of things going on. Playoff baseball, hockey on Saturday, blah 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 blah. Tune in to CGFL. U Sports as well. I know U Sports has been great, NCAA, all that good stuff. Support the CGFL, support the BCFC, as it is a great product, as well as the OFC and PFC as well. It's been a ton of fun, guys. Hope this isn't the last one, and we will catch you guys next time.